This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Hey, everybody. My guest is the amazing, fabulous, generous, and brilliant Scott McKain, CSP, CPAE, all the C's, all the P's, every award, every distinction, and we'll get back to that.
I see what you did there.
Yes. In our beloved National Speakers Association. How are you, my friend? Great to see you.
It's great to see you, David. Thank you very much for the chance to do this. I've been looking forward to this. Thank you.
So I always have a little surprise for my guests. You're not going to believe this, but it doesn't matter. This took me less than 3 minutes to put my hands on.
Oh, look at that.
Now, you might say, oh, yeah, Newman bought it on eBay, whatever, sure. But you know what? As a bookmark, and people will love this. So this is back when Borders existed.
Get out of here. Oh, my gosh.
2006, my friend.
What?
Bought the book. Wow. So you're owed a royalty check. It was $21.99, buddy.
You paid full price. Holy cow.
And money well spent. So
you're too kind.
Let's start with this. Let's talk about the role of book publishing, and we'll fast forward all the way to Create Distinction, the latest and greatest update. But tell me, how did you leverage the book into your thought leadership platform, and how did that all come about?
That's a great question. And David, this is something you're the expert on, not me. But one of the things that I've certainly learned through practical experience is it's much more difficult to reposition than it is to position. Because in repositioning, you're trying to get the marketplace to forget what they used to know about you, right? Or at least to put it on the shelf and to pay attention to what's new and out there. And I've been doing this for so long. I didn't have content expertise in the early days. I was an enthusiastic young man that was really cheap to book and could give a decent, humorous, motivational speech. And I realized that was not going to be long-term. And my speaking coach at the time, the late, great Ron Arden, really helped convince me that that was not a long-term career strategy. And, I grew up in a family business, and I was trying to build my own business, and I was fascinated about customers. And so I started, my first book was All Business is Show Business. That What Customers Really Want There was the second book. And so what it really did was give me the chance to reposition and grow my market and to take my career to another level. I've been asked occasionally at NSA, if you had one thing to do over, what would it be? And I would get into writing a book sooner. I was a speaker for, almost 20 years before I published my first book. And, I started very, very young. But if I had anything to do over, I would get in the book business, the content business. We can talk more about that, but that's what it did for me. It turned my career around.
Yeah, how about that? Well, and then let's talk a little bit also about just kind of marketing, because I know that, and this is a point where we're going to lovingly disagree.
Yeah.
I've heard you say this many, many times, and I think in the context, it's a good piece of wisdom that your best marketing is the speech.
Yeah.
And that you should speak a few hundred times for free, as you did, and frankly, as I did, maybe not hundreds of times for free, but a lot for free. There's an aspect of this where you say, okay, well, if I'm going to inflict a not ready for primetime speech, it better be on a non-paying audience.
Yeah.
I think today, looking at where you and I are, looking where a lot of our kind of mid-career speakers, and certainly you as an advanced speaker, you would never inflict a not ready for prime time speech on any audience.
Yeah.
So why is that okay when we're starting out?
Well, how else are you going to start? I mean,
you got to be awesome on day one.
Well, if you compare it to an athlete, right? They have the chance to play little league and high school and college ball before they get to the pros. If you're an actor, you can be bad in community theater and bad in regional theater before you ever get to Broadway. And so regardless of what you do, I mean, unless you have climbed Mount Everest backwards blindfolded at night, if you're a normal guy like you and I are, or a normal gal, how else are we going to earn our right to be on bigger platforms if we don't pay our dues on smaller platforms? Now, I think one of the things that's dramatically changed is that speaking for no honorarium or given a fee for that speech, there wasn't the technology where I could sell you a course, or I could give the audience a free ebook that got them in my funnel that would let me sell them something later on. That didn't exist back then. And so if I were starting today, yes, I would give free speeches to try to build momentum in the marketplace, but a free speech doesn't mean that there's no income from the engagement.
Oh, very much so. Absolutely right. Well, here we go. Hang on. I think you may have seen this before, but I used to give these out.
I love that.
Right?
Yes.
Because there really is no such thing as a free speech.
It's a free speech.
For free, but for 1 year, I did this. I looked back at the genealogy of kind of where my clients came from and what speech they came from and so on. On average, and I don't speak a lot because that's not my business model, but the number was $2,200. I monetized every quote unquote free speech. At some point later. Either they came back, or it was a referral, or it was a connection, or it was an introduction, or it was some advocate or influencer or referral source. It was $2,200. And it's like, well, you should never speak for free. I think never and always in this business is crazy, right? So
you're exactly right.
Yeah. So tell me, one thing that just fascinated me, and I wanted to go back and listen to the recording, but I didn't get a chance. You did a session at NSA that was called something like the real speaking market, how to get onto the big stages and stop playing monkey nuts. Because I think there's two levels of speaking, right? There's kind of like, well, I'll go to my chamber. I'll get maybe a couple $1,000s from this little state association of lunch ladies or whatever it is. I know we can't talk fees. But then there's this whole other stratosphere that not a lot of people know about and that you shared during that NSA convention talk. Can you give us just a quick little 2-3 minute summary of some of the highlights there? Because that was fascinating.
The part that really struck me the most about that was the conversation with my buddies in the country music band Diamond Rio. And after my first wife passed away, they picked me up, we're on the bus, and they were just taking care, we're on the bus in the middle of the night. And the lead singer said, our businesses are a whole lot alike. And I'm like, are you kidding me? They're nothing alike. You got a bus, you got all these people. I'm just by myself, hoping for the A-list on Southwest. I don't have a big deal. And they said, well, no, everything for us revolves around the song, the material, that's the core. And from that springs concerts and recordings and fan clubs and television appearances and all that. And they said, and yours is about the material. Well, as silly as that sounds, I thought it was about the speech, but really it's the core content that you come up with. And then from that, you generate books and you generate online learning programs and you generate presentations where you're fee paid and on and on and on. And then the better your content and the higher level your marketing, the more demand you create, and therefore the more you go up. And the other thing that they talked about was, they're kind of like A-, B+ in the stratosphere of country music.
Yeah.
The fascinating part they were saying was, if you're an A+ or an A, if you're Garth Brooks, if you're, Tim McGraw, if you're Jake Owen, you're making exponentially more than what the A- list is. And I started thinking about that. And if you think about the Tony Robbinses and you think about the Gary Vaynerchuks and so forth in our business, they're making exponentially more than what particularly I was at that time. And so I started to try to analyze, what did it take to get there? And I certainly don't think I'm there yet, and I'm still working on it. But it's just like I'm going to San Francisco, the thing for Volkswagen here in a couple of weeks, where Gary Vaynerchuk's the other speaker. And so, we're trying to get there. It is fascinating because part of what people are hiring you for at that level is that mix of content and personality. That mix of, he gave us something or she gave us something that we can take home and use, and this experiential presentation. And quite frankly, some name value too. They saw you on Twitter or they saw your video on YouTube before you got there. And so just a quick aside, one of the things that I'm doing a lot of now is to shoot a quick video that we give to the client before the engagement. And it sounds so bad to say, I hate this, but it's part of the game that we're in. It's kind of what we joke and call the dig me reel, but it's saying, here's Scott speaking at the lawn of the White House with the president there. So they enter the room perceiving there is a degree of celebrity involved that takes it to the higher level. And David, just as an aside too, one of the really interesting things is the marketplace has that's why we're booking what we're booking, is the marketplace gets it. But sometimes the people that don't are, again, the ones that have you positioned at a particular area, because it's harder to reposition than it is to position.
Right.
So the takeaway from that is, as a speaker, think about not only developing your material, but developing the whole persona, the brand, which is your expertise that goes with it. Because part of what they're buying, when they're buying a Gary Vaynerchuk or when they're buying whoever, I mean, you can insert your favorite big name there, they're buying not just what they will say, but the whole aura that comes around. Because, as someone once said, all business is show business.
Someone
right?
once did say that. That's
Someone
right.
once did say that. And so you go see a movie that's got Leonardo DiCaprio in it, not necessarily because you want to see a guy crawling through the wilderness, but because, hey, it's Leo. We got to see this movie.
Well, it's like authors, right? Going back to the book thing for a second,
Yeah.
I think Seth Godin's the one that popularized this. He says, don't worry about writing books that people will buy. Find the people that will buy whatever you write.
There you go. Bingo.
Right? So you're waiting for the next Tom Clancy book. You're waiting for the next Seth Godin book. You're waiting for the next Scott McKain book. You know?
Not at that level. But that's the other thing, though, is, I used to think it really wasn't worth it unless you had a tribe the size of Seth's or of Gary's. And it's not that way at all, because they didn't have a tribe that size all along either.
Right.
I watch what you're doing, David. You're doing the same thing. You develop your group, and then you hope that the group keeps expanding.
Right.
But if it doesn't, it's still okay, because if you're delivering high value to those people, we're very fortunate to get to do this. It's still
yeah, very much so. Well, and watching you work and watching you teach and watching you even at NSA, watching your videos, it comes through your pores that you love what you're doing. You love what you're doing.
Thanks for saying that. It is really important to me. And I know that there's folks that after a particular length of time in the business, they see their career in the rearview mirror. And I'm hoping the next 10 years are the best years of my career. I really want to keep going.
Absolutely.
And keep getting better. And I don't know why you would ever not want to. It's still a kick in the head to get to do this. And I'm so blessed to get to do it.
Now, I'm curious, because you started out in, one might categorize it as customer service, correct?
Yeah.
But then, and it's so funny because it's kind of a self-referential meta thing I'm going to share with you here. I'm guessing that you said customer service speakers, dime a dozen. They're everywhere. I got to thin slice that. And so I'm going to own this fabulous word, distinction. And I hope, unless people want to get sued, I hope you're the only distinction speaker that's out there that really owns that real estate in the prospect's mind. Talk about how you went from kind of broad, because even this book it's a very smart book, but it's, again, 10 plus years ago. It's still a customer service book. Tell us about the evolution from customer service, kind of fairly broad and very populated, to the one and only expert on distinction.
Well, thank you. And, it's kind of funny. I saw that there was another speaker who was speaking on distinction, and I got like 30 messages from NSA pals, and I see where he's starting to speak about something different now. And I get it, because I can't go out and do C at the top. I mean, not that I'm at that level. I don't mean that, but certain speakers own, particular, and I don't mean own like federally protected, I could sue somebody for saying the word kind of thing.
Right.
But it's mind share is what it's about. So you nailed it. I mean, you're exactly right. I thought I can either be a really good customer service speaker for the rest of my career, or I could, get this, I could actually walk my talk, because in all business, showbiz, part of what I talked about is that you have to create this very unique market position. If I want to make a movie and I have Leonardo DiCaprio in it, to come back to that analogy, I'm going to have people come see it. If I put a generic actor in it, I've got a much harder sell.
Right.
And so what I was trying to do was to be known for something. And I was having this conversation with a NSA colleague of ours the other day, that now that it's worked, people kind of go, oh, of course, and all that.
Right.
But you should have been there when the bureaus were calling saying, we get no requests for distinction. Nobody asks for that. Go back to customer service. What are you doing? You're ruining your career, So, but the other thing is, in terms of branding, you can't differentiate a generic.
Man, let's replay that 5 times for people. You can't differentiate a generic. That's a great soundbite.
Oh, thanks. Well, I just learned that. And because they would say, oh, he's a really nice guy and he's one of the best customer service speakers out there. Well, I really want to be a nice guy, and I really wanted to be one of the best out there, but it still meant that there were a boatload of speakers who were still in that same place. So I thought if I narrowed the focus, I'm not going to teach you all about customer service, but I can teach you how to make your service stand out from the competition, how to make it distinctive and unique in the marketplace. ways. There's a lot of sales trainers out there. I can't teach you how to sell, but what I could do is to say, okay, let's take your current sales process and let's analyze just that little slice. What are 3 or 4 steps that you could take to make your sales stand out? And that's been the key.
So you could almost take, and maybe you're doing this, you could almost take this concept of distinction and talk about distinction through the lens of sales, distinction through the lens of leadership, distinction through the lens of strategy, distinction through the lens of customer service. And so your topic is super specific, laser, well-focused, well-defined. The application of it can be whatever that client's looking for.
Right.
In fact, because it's so different, right? They say, oh, we had a lot of sales trainers, but no one's ever talked about distinction for our salespeople. No one's ever talked about distinction for our leadership retreat. No one's ever talked about distinction in our company strategy. So it's almost like you're the secret sauce, right? You're that extra layer of DNA, not a sales speaker, but hugely valuable for sales audiences. Not a leadership speaker, quote unquote, in the quotes, but awesome leadership message with distinction. And so because people are afraid, oh, if I pick one thing, I'll never be able to do anything else. You've picked one thing and you can almost do anything.
And that was planned, you know?
It wasn't accidental. I didn't just pick up on that spontaneously, right?
Well, you know, it's kind of funny because if I went out and said, hey, I'll speak about leadership, I'll speak about sales, I'll speak about, I'm generic. But from the study that I did, there were 4-step process that organizations or even individuals went through to become more distinctive. And so if you isolate that on how are we leading this organization, let's look at it through the lens of that 4-step process. It's not going to teach the very basic elements of leadership that are critical or of sales or customer service, but it will help them sharpen their focus on it and take it to a higher level. And so that's worked out pretty well. It kind of occurred to me too, David, after so many NSA meetings where people say, you know, pick a lane. And we tend to think of that lane as being, I'm going to speak in the automotive industry, or I'm going to speak in real estate, or I'm going to speak in tech. I thought, what if you picked the lane of what you said, narrowed that, and then you would work in all these different, you know, I wouldn't have to say no to a tech group. I'm only speaking in automotive or whatever it might be. I could say yes to every industry because then what industry doesn't want to stand out?
Right. And I remember from our 2011 interview when we did point counterpoint for Brian, you dropped a thought bomb there and it was just this. It was your niche is your topic. Yeah. Now, if you have a generic topic like your every other customer, well, that doesn't work for you. So the precursor to that advice is what you just gave here, that if you have a super well-defined, distinct, differentiated, unique value kind of topic, and the application of it can live in lots of different contexts, then you know what? Your niche is your topic.
Yes, exactly. And it allowed me too to ask them questions rather than try to have all the answers, right? As silly as that sounds, the speeches seemed to the audience to be infinitely more tailored because I could say, okay, how clear are you about this? I had one deal where I was doing a small consulting day and the owner of the company had his 12 top people. And he said, well, you can skip the clarity piece. We've got that. And I said, so if I ask everybody in the room to write down what this organization stands for, he said, everybody's on the same sheet. Well, like I said, there's 12 people in the room and we got 10 different answers, right? And so it gave me the opportunity then to dive into what would normally be my clarity part of the program, but now all of a sudden it's about them. And the more that we can do, and I've heard you say this a bunch, the more we make it about them and not about us, the more they appreciate what we have brought to them.
Oh, yeah. No, you become a genius as soon as you put them at the center of the program.
Yeah.
I like this guy because he's all about me.
He's speaking our language. I need that.
That's right. Exactly. Well, so tell us about the empire. Give me what's the state of the empire today? Because like I said, I went to scottmckain.com and you have a lot more going on than just speaking. You've got training. You've got, like you just said, this consulting day. You've got online education. So tell us about, you've got licensing. You got all this great stuff. What's the empire look like and how did that come to be? How did you add on some of those pieces?
Now, this is the part I wish I could say I planned, okay? I mean, in hindsight, I may, our strategic It was that I did a program for a big tech company, and they said, what if you went to our top resellers, our top partners, and spend a day with them and help them really put into action what you're talking about and consult with them? Do you do consulting? Yeah, I do now. So I read everything Alan Weiss has written, and and that kind of got that started because, the funny thing is, this sounds so silly to say, David, but I would ask questions because I really didn't know. And then afterwards they were going, those were really insightful questions. It's because I didn't know, but it's almost, again, back to show business. It's almost the Larry King thing where Larry King doesn't do a lot of prep. So he's asking you the questions that the customer, the frontline person is asking. I'll give you a quick example. I was in Europe and I said to this group, if you were going to start a competitor, what would that competitor look like? Where could they compete with you? So we made this list. And I said, so why don't you set up a separate business and do exactly that and compete with yourself? And they were like, the old line about a dog looking at the ceiling fan. They were like,
who hired the crazy American?
To me, that was so, and so now they have, so it's just crazy stuff. But
boy, that's great.
So that's how that happened. The online learning came from walking through the trade show at NSA.
They gotcha.
Yeah.
It looks like a great program, though. Tell us about how does that work? How do people buy it? How do you like to sell it? Where does it fit into the Scott McKain experience?
That's an area that we are working on to grow on. It's been good. It hasn't been great so far. But typically what happens is we'll do a pre-event small training program that will provide sometimes the entire group, sometimes just certain people in the group that gets them in the system so that it gives them a free chapter, which is kind of like the very basic stuff that I talk about. So by the time the group gets there, now they've already had some basic information on what I'm going to be talking about. So we can start at a little bit higher level and really hit the ground running. Also, they feel like they know me before I'm there, right? I mean, that initial thing we have to go through as speakers where you establish rapport, well, it does that on video. The other thing is it allows me to say, I know that 72% of you in this audience right now have been with a company 5 years or less, right? So as you well know, if you customize the bookends, the audience perception is the whole thing is customized, right? And so if I start by saying this and end with another statistic about them that I've gleaned from that, then the perception is that the whole presentation is tailored. And then we will work with organizations and say, 78% of your people got involved with this. They said that they liked it. Is there a way that we can follow up with it after the meeting? And so that's where that's going. What we're trying to experiment with too is, what's the best format? More people are watching it mobile and they want shorter bites. That's one of the changes we've got to make is to tighten each session, maybe have more sessions of a shorter period of time so that people can watch, 3 and 4 minutes and then move on. So we're working on that. Books are doing great. The 15th anniversary edition of All Business is Show Business got a new book, Iconic, The Ultimate Level of Distinction.
Wow. So that is one of our favorite words.
Oh, yeah.
Here in this house.
What I'm doing with All Business Showbiz to back up is the cover is going to look like All Business Showbiz, but then like some graffiti artist is spray painted still Show Business.
Nice.
And it's totally rewritten and totally updated. But then because of that, when I get to the Iconic book, it's also a better intro to be able to say, here's not only iconic companies, but are there elements in the iconic entertainers that they have in common with the iconic companies? So here are the things that take it to the ultimate level of distinction.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So a couple of quick closing questions. I want to talk about this new book real quick. Do you feel that for credible thought leaders, consultants, experts to stay current in the buyer's mind, do you have to do the new book every 2 or 3 years? I mean, is that an intentional strategy for you? Is that something new is coming every 2, 3 years?
I don't think it used to be that way, but I certainly think that that's one of the things that's changed. I'd be fascinated to hear your viewpoint on that. I mean, I think about in the olden days, the Eagles went 5, 6, 7 years between Hotel California in the long run and were still popular. I don't think you can do that now. I think there's so much out there in the marketplace. But if I was a recording artist, I wouldn't necessarily release an album, but I would more frequently release tracks. And I wonder if that's what we're going to get into in this business as well, is that every couple of years I can release a major book, but I need white papers or thought leadership papers or something that's continually out in the
Oh,
marketplace. That
well,
advances
so one thing I found, thank you for the reminder, man, we could talk for hours, but we're going to wrap this up. So don't worry. I found your book on showrooming, which is a
Yeah.
Kindle book. And that is a very narrow, very specific book to help retailers have a kind of hybrid online and offline presence so that people don't walk into the store, go on Amazon and buy the thing they just saw in your store.
Right.
How did that come about? And is that part of that kind of intermediate leapfrogging strategy?
Yeah, it is. And it also came about simply from exactly I mean, you said it. It's exactly the technique. Listen to your clients. And I was doing a lot of work at SAP and their division that provides technology and big data for retailers, and also with another company that does all the processing of gift cards. And all their clients are retailers. And so both of them said, oh, here's our number one problem. I said, well, if I wrote a little book about it, would you get it out, as a gift to your clients? Well, I did it. They got sent to everything. And then people started saying, well, do you speak about showrooming? No, I speak about distinction. So how are you so distinctive? They will choose you instead of going to Amazon. And it booked a bunch of speeches. So you've got it exactly right. It's finding ways to continue to release tracks or new things. And the funny thing is, you and I could sit and share a couple chapters and put it together, and we can have an ebook on Amazon by tomorrow morning. I mean, it's true.
Yes.
The ability to turn this around instantly, but in this time of instant production also means the audience moves more quickly than they ever have.
Right.
And so that's why you can't wait 5 years for your next book to come out. You've got to continually have things that are in the marketplace, but there's a myriad of ways you can do that through podcasts and blogs and social media and on and on and on.
Video interviews.
Yeah.
Who knows? So final two questions. This is my closing two. So this is becoming a thing. And we'll see how many more of these, people have the patience to answer for me. If I put you in two situations, situation number one is you are at the next NSA convention. You are in front of our Cavett Institute, all brand new speakers, new, shiny, optimistic, hopeful. What would be 2 or 3 nuggets of advice to give to that room of aspiring new speakers?
Number one, you will tend to run from your own uniqueness. We do that as people. We come to meetings like NSA and we see the successful speaker and we think, oh, I want to be like them, not necessarily like me, right? Because to this point, me hasn't been good enough to be like them. And so I can't tell you how many speakers I've met over the years that have a more fascinating personal story than the stories they're telling on the platform about Southwest Airlines and Starbucks and, and everything else. So don't run from your own uniqueness. Mine the depths of your personal experience and your personal story. Now, you make that personal story about them, not about you, but you leverage what you've learned into creating something unique. And the second thing is don't fall prey to all of those folks that are out there right now that are going to promise you there's a quick way to riches in this business. They're scam artists and liars, and I will tell them that to their face. I have before. There's no instant way to do this. People pick you instead of the other alternatives that they have out there in the marketplace. So if I have, and I know we don't talk about fees, if I have X thousands of dollars to spend.
Bananas.
But yeah, if I have bananas to spend at my event, what I'm going to do is look at the myriad of speakers who charge bananas. And then I will pick one instead of the other options. And so you can't jump in this marketplace at a higher fee because unless you've done something extraordinary. I mean, I've been a speech coach to like Captain Phillips. Okay, when Tom Hanks has played you in the movie and you've been rescued by SEALs, yeah, you can jump in at a higher fee. But unless you're in that kind of unique situation, why would they pick you instead of someone that's paid their dues? And so don't fall prey to the get rich quick. You can do very well in this business. David, I got to tell you, so I'm at the UPS store sending out a book, right? And I'm putting it in the box and everything. And there's a guy on the other side of the table. And he says, oh, what book you sending out? And I held it up. And he said, well, who wrote that? I said, well, I wrote it. He said, oh, what are you doing? You know, I said, well, I'm more of a speaker than an author. He said, oh, man, I'm a speaker too. I said, oh, that's great. He said, well, I haven't given any speeches yet, but I attended this weekend program. And they told me I'm now a professional speaker. And I thought, what other business could you say you're a professional And
I'm a
you've
heart
never done
surgeon.
it. Yeah, exactly. I'm a professional. Yeah, I stayed at the Holiday Inn Express last night too, and it just blew me away. And honestly, I felt so sorry for this guy because of the heartbreak he's going to face that people lied to him about this. And so it can be done, and find reputable people to coach you and guide you and help
Yeah.
you, and go to NSA and get involved in all of those things. It's so critical.
This is a great business to be in if you want to be a 10-year overnight success.
Yeah, no kidding. I did a meeting the other day, and somebody, the meeting planner said, "Man, where have you been? I'd never heard of you." And I thought, where have I been? But
I've been working my butt off.
But there's a guy named Bob Pittman. Bob Pittman is now the CEO of Six Flags. You probably know the name. He was one of the originators at MTV. Is where he really did.
Oh, wow.
But when Bob Pittman, he was the promotions director for WLS television, right? And he's like 22 years old. And so the way he got known in ABC was he was given this package of horrible old movies that they were going to just fill time with on the weekends. And he came up with the ad campaign, and he said, some call it a rerun, but if you haven't seen it, it's new to you. And isn't that the way it is in our business? I mean,
yeah.
People may think, boy, everybody in the world has heard of Scott or Joe or Larry or Mark or, me or Connie or whoever.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, then it's new to you. And that's fine. That's exciting because it means we can continue and grow our careers.
Well, so speaking of those names, my second and final question is, or situation is now we're going to drop you in. We're going to airlift you. We're going to parachute you in to the next CSP CPAE Summit with our mid-career and advanced and very successful speakers. What would your 2 or 3 nuggets of advice to them sound like? And be careful, if this is really good, you'll be speaking at the next CSP CPAE.
That would be great. I wouldn't mind that a bit. Be excited about your profession. Continually renew yourself, because I got in a trap where I stopped listening to my own speech. I said things about how you serve customers or how you stand out or how you do this or that the audience responded to, but then I wasn't necessarily going home and being as diligent about it as I should have been in my own business. And so if you are at that point in your career, right, you have to have content that is resonating and finding traction with audiences. So my question is, when was the last time you went through your own content and listened to your own speech and started walking your talk? I really hope this doesn't come out wrong. I apologize in advance, but we're in the midst of our best year ever. And I'm beyond description grateful for that. I'm not trying to be boastful about that. The only reason I'm saying that is I don't think it's a coincidence that this has started happening after I really started listening to what I was telling other people.
Oh my gosh, no question. Well, the joke I always make is, imagine how successful we would all be if we followed our own advice. Right? You can do this for anybody else, any other company, any other executive, any other entrepreneur. The only people we can't help is sitting in our chair unless we make that extra level of effort.
You're so right. It's like sometimes I would give my speech and I go, man, I need to write that down. That's it's like, oh, wait, I said it. I got to keep going. I can't. It's like, I don't mean that in a boastful way. I really apologize if it comes out that way. But
you're just such a mean, arrogant snake. I mean, no one likes you. And it's clearly arrogance that's coming out now. Clearly.
It's a strange business, though, isn't it? Because we are the product.
Right.
And it's one thing, I can sell that and say things about that. No one thinks anything about it. But if I'm the product and I say things, then sometimes people perceive that as being too self-aggrandizing.
Well, that's why we have to have smart friends that will say things like, isn't Scott McKain awesome and fantastic? And how can people stay more connected to you? Give us the website, the blog, the whole... Sure. How do people tap into McKain World?
Well, scottmckain.com is our speaking site. That's what meeting planners and bureaus and the like would go to. CreateDistinction.com is the blog. And the new podcast is ProjectDistinct.com.
Super excited. And it's like you just said a moment ago, it's just exciting to watch you be excited about what you're working on and serving your clients and customers and growing in all the fabulous ways that you're growing, even at a very advanced stage of success. Because, if you're not having fun, why play the game?
It's so true. And it's so exciting to be in an industry that, this is so crazy, but I got an email this morning of somebody in my high school class that passed away, and that was tragic. But then I also noted he'd retired. And I'm like, what? And it was, a deal. He part of it was military. He put 20 years in and all that kind of stuff. And he was at a point he could retire. But I was like, I think it's a dangerous time in our lives when we don't have anything to do.
Right. And there's a big connection, as you know, between people who retire and pretty quickly die because that was their life spirit.
Right. And so I just think we are so fortunate and so blessed to be in a business where you can be a millennial. And if your content is good and if your delivery is great, you can kill it out there. But also that you can be around for a while. And if you're connecting with audiences and if your content is good and if you're delivering it from the platform, nobody pulls you off the stage. And so we are very, very fortunate to be in this business.
Very much so. On that note, Scott McKain, thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Same here, my friend. Thanks, David.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.